Hey guys, today I'll be showing you my 3 picture profiles to produce cinematic imagery. Now these picture profiles aim to provide maximum dynamic range, accurate colors, a filmic look, and they should be easy to color grade as well. They all have the following 3 things in common. They've got the Pro color mode, which I've found to be the most accurate, giving colors which match what I'm actually seeing when I'm there shooting. And if you like Canon colors, they match Canon colors more closely than any other mode. And then we've got the knee, which I always turn off. If you look at this image comparison, with the knee turned on, you can see the highlights look very compressed and they look unnatural. When you turn it off, it looks a lot more realistic. You lose a slight bit of dynamic range, but I'd much rather have a little bit less dynamic range but better looking footage. And then we've got detail, which is the same as sharpening. We're going to turn this down to 0 because having this on can add some horrible artifacts which can't be removed afterwards, and we can always add sharpening afterwards. So let's just get straight into it with the picture profile settings. Now the first one, Cine 4, my favourite. We're going to first start off obviously with changing the gamut to Cine 4. Then next we're going to turn off the knee. Then we're going to put the color mode into Pro with saturation +5. And then we're going to turn on the detail -7. Basically turn off the sharpening. Now when to use this picture profile. Cine 4 records most of its information in the shadows and the midtones and less in the highlights. So if you're recording scenes where the subject of interest is in that region of the shadows or the midtones, that is the best time to use Cine 4. So a few examples of this would be if you're shooting in low light, you're shooting indoors, or you're shooting outdoors where the subject is not like a sunset or the brightest part of the image. Generally, in most cases, Cine 4 is a well-rounded picture profile, and it's the one I use the most. Next we've got Cine 1. I use the same settings as I use for Cine 4, but just change the gamut to Cine 1. Now Cine 4 records most of its information in the highlights and a lot less compared to Cine 4 in the midtones and shadows. So when you're not using Cine 4, you can be using Cine 1 when you got details in the highlights. For example, if you've got a nice sunset, you want to record all that color information in the highlights, you get a nice color in the sky, you can use Cine 1 for that. Any subject you're shooting where the details are in the highlights, if you're shooting in a situation where the whole scene is very bright and you've got blue skies, you might want to shoot with Cine 1 because that would make the blue pop a bit more because there's more details in the highlights and you get a nicer looking image than Cine 4. And with both Cine 1 and Cine 4, to get the best looking footage you want to underexpose it slightly, so maybe 0.3 stops or 0.7 stops underexposure. When you overexpose the Cine gammas like Cine 1, Cine 4, they don't look that good and the footage won't come out as nice. It's always best to underexpose slightly. Then the last one we've got is S-Log2, which uses the same settings as all the other picture profiles, but just change the gamut to S-Log2. Now, if you're going to be color grading with Sony LUTs or using the ACES workflow, I've got a video on that coming soon, then you should be using the S gamut because those methods of color grading are made for that color mode. So if you have another color mode, then when you apply those corrections, it's going to be resulting in some horrible shifts that would be really hard to correct. So, but Pro color mode is good if you plan on recording and then manually color grading, because you won't have to adjust for any shifts in the color. You'll just have to correct contrast, correct exposure to get an accurate image. And for S-Log2, I recommend overexposing as far as you can until the zebras clip. I'll have a video on this coming up really soon, showing you how to expose for it really easily, but you should never underexpose S-Log2. And like, when to use S-Log2, always use S-Log2 when you really need that dynamic range. If you don't need that dynamic range, use Cine 1 or Cine 4, because you'll just be wasting your time having to go through all that effort to color grade it and get a decent image out of it. Also, you don't need to use S-Log in low light, because a low light scene generally doesn't have much dynamic range than a daytime scene. So when you're recording in S-Log, you're going to be recording a lot of empty data, and you'll have to go through a lot more effort to color grade it. Whereas if you record in Cine 4, it's a lot less effort to color grade, and you'll probably get better performance in low light.